Lieutenant Sarah Chen pressed her hand against her side, feeling the warm wetness seeping through her uniform. The plasma burn from the skirmish on Kepler 442b was worse than she'd let on to her squad. Much worse. But as the only human aboard the interspecies research vessel Harmony's Edge, she couldn't afford to show weakness. Not when the other species already questioned humanity's place among the galactic community. The ship's corridors hummed with activity as various alien crew members went about their duties. The tall, crystalline Zephyrians moved with their characteristic chiming steps, while the amphibious aquarii glided smoothly along the moisture-rich lower decks. Sarah forced herself to walk normally, despite the searing pain that shot through her torso with each step. She'd been leading a joint exploration team when the automated defense systems of an ancient ruin had activated. A plasma bolt had caught her in the side, burning through her protective gear and into her flesh. The alien medics had performed initial scans, but their equipment was calibrated for their own biology. They'd declared her stable and focused on treating the more obviously injured Zephyrian team member whose crystal matrix had been cracked. Sarah hadn't corrected them. Humans were still the newcomers to this galactic alliance, barely a century since first contact. Every human action was scrutinized, every weakness noted. She'd seen the whispered conversations, the subtle looks of doubt when humans struggled with tasks that came naturally to other species. The last thing humanity needed was their military representative collapsing from what the others might consider a minor injury. The mess hall was unusually quiet when she entered, most of the day's shift still on duty. Sarah grabbed a nutrition pack and found a corner table, hopping to rest for a few minutes before her next scheduled patrol. The synthetic food tasted like cardboard, but she forced herself to eat, knowing her body needed fuel to heal. "Lieutenant Chen, you appear distressed." The mechanical voice belonged to MX-7, one of the ship's medical assistance bots. The sleek robot rolled up to her table, its sensors probably picking up elevated stress indicators. "Just tired, MX-7. Long mission today." Sarah kept her voice steady, though internally she was calculating how long she could maintain this facade. The burn was deep, and she was starting to feel lightheaded from blood loss. "Perhaps you should visit Medical Bay for a routine checkup. Humans require regular monitoring due to your unique physiology." The bot's tone held what might have been concern if robots could truly feel such things. Sarah shook her head. "The medical staff is busy with the Zephyrian from our team. I'll check in later." She stood carefully, fighting a wave of dizziness. "I have patrol duty to complete." MX-7's optical sensors focused on her with increased intensity. "Lieutenant, your biometric readings suggest..." "Are classified under human medical privacy protocols," Sarah interrupted, pulling rank. "Thank you for your concern, MX-7. The robot sensors continued tracking her as she left the mess hall, but it didn't pursue the matter further. Sarah made her way toward the observation deck, needing somewhere quiet to think. The wound was getting worse, and she knew she was being foolish, but the weight of representing her entire species felt heavier than the pain in her side. As she reached the observation deck, she found it wasn't empty. 3 small figures sat pressed against the massive viewport, watching the stars drift by. Sarah's heart sank as she recognized them, the cubs, or rather the juvenile members of various species who lived aboard the ship with their families. There was Pip, a young Zephyrian whose crystal formations were still developing their adult luminescence. Beside him sat Glub, an aquarii tadpole whose gills still required frequent moisture supplements. And there was Crix, a Vorthan child whose fur was still the soft gray of youth rather than the deep blue of maturity. The 3 turned as she entered, and Sarah forced a smile despite the increasing pain. The cubs had taken a particular interest in humans since she joined the crew, fascinated by the stories she'd tell them about Earth. They were innocent and curious, seeing her not as a representative of a questionable species, but simply as Sarah who told good stories and sometimes shared human candy from her personal supplies. "Sarah," Pip's voice chimed with excitement. "Come see, there's a nebula forming in the Kepler system. The colors are amazing." Sarah moved closer, each step carefully controlled. The nebula was indeed beautiful, swirls of purple and gold gas illuminated by a nearby star. "It's wonderful," she agreed, settling carefully onto the cushioned bench beside them. Glub's large, dark eyes fixed on her with sudden concern. His species was known for their empathic abilities, though they were still developing in juveniles. "Sarah, you smell different, hurt smell." Pip's crystalline body flickered with attention. Are you injured from the mission? The medical bay has been very busy. I'm fine, Sarah said automatically, just tired from the long day. But as she sat with the cubs, watching the stellar nursery bloom with new stars, Sarah felt the weight of her deception growing heavier. These young beings trusted her completely, looked up to her. Was she really serving anyone's interests by hiding an injury that could potentially be serious? Crix, who had been quiet until now, suddenly sniffed the air with his sensitive nose. His ears flattened against his head in distress. Sarah, there's blood scent, strong blood scent. His young voice was filled with worry. The three cubs turned to look at her with increased concern, and Sarah realized her carefully maintained facade was crumbling. These children, with their developing senses and honest emotions, were seeing through her deception in ways the sophisticated medical equipment had failed to do. Sarah began, then stopped. The pain was getting worse, and she was finding it harder to concentrate. Maybe it was time to stop pretending everything was fine. The three cubs exchanged worried glances, their different species united in their concern for Sarah. Pip's crystal body pulsed with a soft, urgent light that Sarah had learned meant distress in young Zephyrians. Glub's gills fluttered rapidly, and Crix's tail twitched anxiously. Sarah, Pip said carefully, adults sometimes think cubs don't understand things, but we do understand hurt, and you are hurt badly. Sarah felt her resolve weakening. The pain was making it hard to think clearly, and the innocent concern in their voices was breaking down her defenses. I didn't want anyone to worry. The medical staff is busy with more important patients. More important than you? Glub asked, his tadpole voice filled with confusion. But you're Sarah, you're important to us. The simple statement hit her harder than any diplomatic criticism could have. These children didn't see her as a representative of humanity or judge her species by her weaknesses. They just saw her as someone they cared about who was in pain. Crix suddenly stood up, his young face determined. We need to get help. The Medbot said routine checkups are important for humans because of your, what was the word? Physiology. But the medical bay, Sarah started to protest. Has other medical bots, Pip interrupted, his chimes taking on a matter-of-fact tone. And Dr. Vale isn't busy. I saw her in her office reading data pads. Dr. Vale was the ship's chief xenobiologist, specializing in cross-species medicine. She was also notoriously intimidating, with most crew members avoiding her unless absolutely necessary. But the cubs had no such fear of authority figures. She's scary, Glub whispered, then looked at Sarah's pale face. But not as scary as Sarah being hurt and hiding it. Before Sarah could protest further, Crix had activated his comm unit. Dr. Vale, this is Crix. Sarah is hurt and needs help. She's on observation deck 7. Sarah wanted to object, but a fresh wave of pain made her gasp involuntarily. The cubs immediately clustered around her, their different forms of comfort touching her. Pip's gentle crystal chimes, Glub's cool, damp hand on her forehead, and Crix's warm fur against her arm. Don't be scared, Pip said softly. Dr. Vale is actually nice once you get to know her. She just acts grumpy because adult problems make her tired. Within minutes, the observation deck doors slid open with a sharp hiss. Dr. Vale strode in, her six-legged arachnoid form moving with precise efficiency. Her multiple eyes quickly assessed the situation, and two of her arms were already reaching for a portable medical scanner from her kit. Cubs, step back, please, she said, her voice carrying authority but not unkindness. Lieutenant Chen, I need you to remove your hand from your side. Sarah hesitated, and Dr. Vale's primary eyes focused on her with laser intensity. Lieutenant, I have 3 worried children who defied adult authority to call me because they were concerned for your welfare. The least you can do is cooperate with treatment. Reluctantly, Sarah moved her hand away. The fabric of her uniform was soaked with blood, more than she'd realized. Dr. Vale's scanner hummed as it passed over the wound, and her expression grew increasingly serious. This is a deep plasma burn with significant internal damage, the doctor said sharply. How long ago did this occur? About 6 hours ago, Sarah admitted quietly. 6 hours, Dr. Vale's voice rose slightly, and you didn't seek proper treatment because... Sarah glanced at the cubs who were watching the exchange with wide eyes. I thought it was manageable. The initial scan said I was stable. The initial scan was performed with Zephyrian-calibrated equipment, Dr. Vale said, pulling out more medical instruments. Which reads human tissue density incorrectly. You have internal bleeding and the beginning stages of plasma poisoning. The cubs made various sounds of distress. Glub's gills turned a darker shade of blue, while Pip's chimes became discordant. Crix whimpered softly. Dr. Vale noticed their reaction and softened her tone slightly. However, it's entirely treatable if we act now. Cubs, you did exactly the right thing by calling for help. As Dr. Vale worked to stabilize Sarah's condition with field medical equipment, she continued talking. Lieutenant, may I ask why you chose to hide a potentially serious injury? This seems counterproductive to your mission effectiveness. Sarah winced as the doctor injected something that immediately began to dull the pain. I didn't want to appear weak. Humans are still proving ourselves in the galactic community. Dr. Vale paused in her work, 4 of her eyes focusing on Sarah while 2 others monitored her instruments. Lieutenant, in my 40 years of xenobiological study, I have observed that humans have a peculiar tendency toward what your species calls heroic stupidity. You consistently endanger yourselves to avoid appearing vulnerable. Pip spoke up suddenly. But being hurt isn't the same as being weak. When I cracked my crystal matrix last year, everyone helped me heal. It made the matrix stronger than before. Exactly, Dr. Vale said, using what sounded like approval in her voice. Healing requires community support. By hiding your injury, you denied your crew the opportunity to assist a valued member. Glub nodded enthusiastically, his empathic abilities picking up on the changing emotional atmosphere. And you made us scared when we could smell hurt smell but couldn't help. We thought maybe humans hide hurts because they don't trust friends, Crix added sadly. Sarah felt a sudden tightness in her chest that had nothing to do with her injury. No, that's not. I do trust you, all of you. I was trying to protect. Protect us from what? Dr. Vale asked. From caring about your well-being, from the opportunity to demonstrate the cooperation that makes this ship function. Sarah looked at the 3 cubs, who were watching her with such open concern and affection that it made her throat tight. I thought if I showed weakness, it would reflect badly on all humans. Sarah, Pip said gently, when you told us stories about Earth, you said humans take care of pack members, but packs help each other when someone is hurt. That's what makes them strong. Dr. Vale's mandibles clicked in what Sarah had learned was the arachnoid equivalent of a smile. It seems these cubs understand pack dynamics better than some adults. Your species' strength doesn't come from individual invulnerability, Lieutenant. It comes from your capacity to support each other through difficulties. As Dr. Vale finished her emergency treatment, Sarah felt the relief of proper pain management and medication working through her system. But more than that, she felt something lifting from her shoulders, a weight she hadn't realized she'd been carrying. The immediate danger is past, Dr. Vale announced, packing away her instruments. But you'll need proper treatment in the medical bay, and Lieutenant, you'll be on medical leave for at least a week while the plasma damage heals. Sarah started to protest, but my duties will be handled by others, Dr. Vale said firmly. That's how crews work. When one member is injured, others step up. It's not a sign of that member's weakness, it's a sign of the team's strength. Crix, who had been uncharacteristically quiet during the medical treatment, suddenly spoke up. Dr. Vale, why do adults make things so complicated? When I'm hurt, I just ask for help, but grown-ups seem to think asking for help is bad. Dr. Vale's multiple eyes regarded the young Vorthan with what might have been amusement. That, young Crix, is an excellent question. It seems that as beings mature, many species develop the misconception that independence equals strength. Cubs like yourselves understand that interdependence is actually what creates strong communities. Glub nodded vigorously. In the deep pools on my homeworld, the elders say that tadpoles who try to swim alone get eaten by the deep fish, but groups of tadpoles can chase away even big predators. Your elders are wise, Dr. Vale said. Lieutenant Chen, perhaps you could learn something from these young ones about the true nature of strength. As they prepared to move Sarah to the medical bay, Pip approached her carefully. Sarah, when you're better, will you tell us more stories about Earth? But this time, can you tell us about times when humans helped each other through scary situations? Sarah smiled, the first genuine smile she'd felt in hours. I'd like that, Pip. There are lots of stories about humans working together when things get difficult. Good, Crix said with satisfaction. Because we want to understand humans better, Not just the strong parts, but all the parts. That's what friends do. As they made their way to the medical bay, Sarah noticed something she'd missed before. Other crew members weren't looking at her with judgment or disappointment as Dr. Vale supported her walk. Instead, she saw concern, offers of help, and what looked like relief that she was getting proper care. Commander Thex, the Vorthan officer in charge of the science division, stopped them in the corridor. "Lieutenant Chen, I heard you were injured in today's mission. Do you need assistance getting to medical?" "Thank you, Commander, but Dr. Vale has everything under control," Sarah replied, surprised by the offer. "Good. When you're recovered, I'd like to debrief about the mission. Your quick thinking during the defense system activation saved several lives today." Commander Thex's ears were upright with respect. "Take all the time you need to heal properly." Similar interactions continued as they moved through the ship. The Zephyrian engineer offered to adjust the lighting in her quarters for optimal human healing. The Aquarii communications officer inquired whether she needed her family on Earth contacted. Even MX-7, the medical bot she dismissed earlier, approached to apologize for not being more insistent about her medical check. "It seems," Dr. Vale observed quietly, "that your crew cares more about your well-being than your perceived strength." The medical bay was efficiently equipped for multi-species treatment. Dr. Vale transferred Sarah to a human-calibrated medical bed and began running comprehensive scans. The cubs settled into nearby chairs, clearly intending to stay during the treatment. "Cubs," Dr. Vale said gently, "this might take some time and you have evening studies to complete." "We already finished," Pip said quickly, "and Sarah might need friends nearby while she heals." Dr. Vale looked at Sarah questioningly. Sarah found herself nodding. "If it's not against medical protocols, I'd like them to stay." "Very well, but no interfering with treatment." Dr. Vale's tone was mock stern, but Sarah could see the affection in her multiple eyes as she looked at the cubs. As the detailed scans proceeded, the full extent of Sarah's injury became clear. The plasma burn had indeed caused internal damage, and the poison from the energy weapon was slowly affecting her nervous system. Without treatment, she would have collapsed within hours, possibly fatally. "You were very fortunate," Dr. Vale told her as she prepared the treatment regimen. "A few more hours, and the damage might have been irreversible." Glub's empathic abilities were picking up on Sarah's emotions. "You're feeling guilty," he said perceptively, "but guilt doesn't help healing. Gratitude does." "Gratitude?" Sarah asked. "For friends who noticed when you were hurt," Crix explained. "For doctor who fixed you, for not being alone when scary things happen." Pip's crystal body pulsed with soft, encouraging light, and for learning that asking for help makes everyone stronger, not weaker. As Dr. Vale worked, she shared observations from her years of studying different species. "Humans fascinate the scientific community precisely because of your paradoxical nature. You're simultaneously individual and communal, independent and interdependent. Your greatest achievements come not from lone heroes, but from your species' unprecedented ability to cooperate across vast differences." "But other species cooperate too," Sarah pointed out. "Yes, but usually within strict hierarchical or genetic frameworks. Humans cooperate with anyone, other species, artificial intelligences, even former enemies. Your empathy extends beyond your own kind in ways that continue to surprise galactic sociologists." The cubs were listening intently to this conversation. Crix spoke thoughtfully. "Is that why humans were chosen for the exploration missions? Because you can work with anyone?" "Partly," Dr. Vale confirmed, "but also because humans have a unique perspective on problem solving. You're willing to take risks, to try unconventional approaches, and to sacrifice for others even when it's not strategically optimal." "Like hiding injuries so others don't worry?" Pip asked innocently. Dr. Vale's mandibles clicked in amusement. "That's the problematic side of human self-sacrifice. True courage isn't avoiding help when you need it. It's accepting help gracefully and offering it freely to others." Sarah felt the treatment beginning to take effect, the poison being neutralized and the damaged tissue starting to regenerate under the influence of advanced medical technology. But more than her body was healing. Something in her understanding of her role aboard the ship was changing too. The next few days brought a steady stream of visitors to the medical bay. Sarah had expected to feel isolated during her recovery, but instead found herself at the center of more social interaction than she'd experienced since joining the crew. Lieutenant Commander Zix, the Zephyrian whose crystal matrix had been damaged in the same incident, visited on the second day. His formation was already showing signs of healing, the cracks filled with new crystal growth that sparkled differently than the original structure. "I wanted to thank you," he said, his voice creating harmonic overtones that indicated deep sincerity. "Dr. Vale told me that you guided the team to safety while injured yourself. I was unconscious and didn't realize you had been hurt too." Sarah felt uncomfortable with the praise. "You would have done the same." "Perhaps, but that's not the point. The point is that you did it while hiding significant pain. Dr. Vale says humans have an unusual capacity for functioning despite injury." Zix's crystal body pulsed thoughtfully. "But she also says you almost died because you hid the extent of your damage." "I didn't want to seem weak," Sarah admitted. Zix's harmonic laughter filled the medical bay. "Weak? Sarah, I've been studying human history since you joined our crew. Your species regularly performs what other races consider impossible feats precisely because you continue fighting when logic suggests you should surrender." He settled into a chair beside her bed, his crystal structure refracting the medical bay's lights into rainbow patterns. "Do you know what the Galactic Council's first impression of humans was?" Sarah shook her head. "Terror," Zix said simply. "Not because humans are aggressive, though you can be, but because you're unpredictable. Other species fight until defeat is logical, then surrender to preserve resources. Humans fight until victory is achieved or death intervenes. The Council couldn't understand a species that would sacrifice individuals for abstract concepts like justice or freedom." "That sounds more disturbing than impressive," Sarah said. "It was initially. But then the Council observed human peacekeeping efforts, your disaster relief operations, your willingness to risk yourselves for complete strangers. They realized that the same drive that made you terrifying in conflict made you invaluable as allies." The cubs, who had been listening quietly from their corner, perked up at this. Pip spoke first. "So humans are scary brave, not just brave." "Exactly," Zix confirmed. "But Lieutenant Chen, your scary brave nature is why the crew was so concerned about your injury. We've all seen the reports of humans who died because they minimized their wounds. We don't want to lose our human." The casual possessiveness in his words surprised Sarah. "You're human." Glub answered before Zix could. "You're part of our pod now. Pods take care of all members." Crix nodded enthusiastically. "Pack bonded like in your Earth stories." Over the following days, this sentiment was echoed by crew members from every department. Chief Engineer Korax, an amphibious aquarii, visited to discuss modifications to human safety equipment. "The plasma weapon that injured you operates on frequencies that human gear isn't optimally designed to deflect," he explained. "I've been working on upgrades." "You don't need to do that just for me," Sarah protested. Korax's gill slits fluttered in what she'd learned was mild amusement. "Not just for you. For any humans who might serve aboard Alliance vessels, but you're the test subject, so we need to keep you intact for proper data collection." His casual tone made it clear this was meant as affection rather than objectification, and Sarah found herself laughing. "I'm honored to be your test subject." "Good, because I have 17 different gear modifications to try once you're cleared for duty." Dr. Vale, who had been monitoring these conversations, finally spoke up. "Lieutenant, I think you're beginning to understand something important about your role here." "What's that?" "You're not representing humanity to these beings. You are humanity to them. Your individual well-being directly affects their perception and understanding of your entire species." This thought was both reassuring and daunting. Sarah had been so focused on not embarrassing humanity that she'd missed the deeper responsibility, being a good example of human nature, including human vulnerability and the way her species dealt with adversity. Captain Reth visited on the fourth day, bringing news from the exploration mission. "The ruins you discovered contained technology that could revolutionize our understanding of the ancients," the captain reported. "The data you gathered before the defense systems activated is invaluable." "I'm glad something good came from that disaster," Sarah said. Captain Reth, a being whose species Sarah still couldn't properly pronounce, regarded her with what she'd learned to recognize as approval. "Disaster? Lieutenant, you successfully extracted your team from an unknown threat situation with minimal casualties. The plasma burn you sustained was from covering the team's retreat. That's not disaster, that's exemplary leadership. But I hid the injury afterward. A mistake born from admirable motives, Captain Reth said gently. Your desire to avoid burdening others shows the kind of character we value in our officers. You simply need to learn that accepting help when needed is part of good leadership, not a failure of it. The Cubs had become regular fixtures in the medical bay, completing their studies there and entertaining Sarah with stories from around the ship. Through them, she learned things about the crew that formal reports never conveyed. Did you know, Pip said one afternoon, that engineer Korax has been working on safety improvements since before you got hurt. He said humans are precious cargo that needs better protection. And Commander Thex has been studying human pack dynamics, Glub added. She wants to understand how to give humans the right kind of support during missions. Crix, ever practical, shared the most touching information. The food synthesizers in the mess hall have been updated with more human-compatible options. Cook Supervisor Blim said they should have done it sooner, but they weren't sure what humans actually liked versus what you would eat to be polite. These small considerations, these quiet efforts to make her feel welcome and supported, affected Sarah more deeply than any formal recognition could have. She was beginning to understand that her attempts to minimize her needs hadn't protected humanity's reputation. They had prevented her crewmates from showing the care and consideration that their natures prompted them to offer. I've been thinking, she said to the Cubs one evening as Dr. Vale was completing her final treatment cycle, about what you said about PAX taking care of all members. What about it? Crix asked. I think I've been thinking about it wrong. I was trying to take care of everyone else by not needing care myself, but that's not really how PAX work, is it? Pip's crystal structure brightened. No, in PAX everyone takes care of everyone. Sometimes you're the one giving help, sometimes you're the one getting help. That's what makes the pack strong. Exactly, Sarah said, feeling a piece of understanding click into place. I need to learn how to be better at both parts, helping others and letting others help me. Sarah's first day back on duty began with a comprehensive briefing on the new safety protocols that had been developed during her recovery. The conference room was packed with representatives from every department, and Sarah was surprised to realize that the meeting was specifically about protecting human crew members more effectively. Chief Engineer Korax presented the gear modifications with obvious pride. The new personal shield generators are calibrated specifically for human physiology, he explained. They'll provide better protection against plasma-based weapons and energy discharges. Additionally, added Dr. Vale, we've updated all medical scanning equipment with human-specific protocols. The error that led to Lieutenant Chen's misdiagnosis has been eliminated. Captain Reth nodded approvingly. These improvements will benefit not just our current human crew member, but any humans who serve aboard Alliance vessels in the future. Lieutenant Chen's experience has contributed to a fleet-wide safety upgrade. Sarah felt a complex mix of emotions as she realized that her injury and the near disaster of hiding it had prompted systematic improvements that would protect other humans. Her mistake had become a learning opportunity for everyone. There's one more thing, Captain Reth continued. The exploration protocols have been updated to include mandatory buddy system monitoring for all species during away missions. Team members will be assigned to specifically monitor each other's condition and report any concerns immediately. Commander Thex spoke up. This isn't just about humans, but the incident highlighted how different species can miss signs of distress in each other. The buddy system ensures that someone is always paying attention to each team member's well-being. After the briefing, the Cubs found Sarah in her quarters, eager to hear about her first day back. They had decorated her room with drawings and small gifts from various crew members during her recovery. How did it feel to be back on duty? Pip asked, his crystal body pulsing with curiosity. Different, Sarah said honestly. Better. I felt like part of the team instead of like someone trying to prove she belonged. Glub's empathic abilities picked up on her emotional state. You feel settled, like water finding the right current. That's exactly right, Sarah agreed. I spent so much energy trying to hide my vulnerabilities that I never realized how much energy it takes to pretend to be perfect. Crix nodded wisely. Pretending is exhausting, being yourself is much easier. Over the following weeks, Sarah found herself settling into a new rhythm aboard the ship. She participated in the buddy system during away missions, both monitoring others and accepting monitoring herself. She visited the medical bay for regular checkups without embarrassment. Most importantly, she found herself forming deeper friendships with her crewmates as she stopped trying to maintain a facade of invulnerability. The change was perhaps most evident during a challenging rescue mission 3 weeks later. The ship responded to a distress signal from a damaged exploration vessel carrying a mixed crew of Alliance species. The rescue operation required working in a dangerous asteroid field with unstable gravitational conditions. During the mission, Sarah found herself paired with Lieutenant Commander Zix as they worked to extract survivors from the damaged ship. When a piece of debris struck Zix's suit and cracked his crystal structure, Sarah immediately called for medical support and helped stabilize him until the medical team could respond. "Thank you for not trying to handle this alone," Zix said as they waited for extraction, his voice harmonics indicating gratitude tinged with amusement. "Thank you for the same," Sarah replied, recognizing that her automatic call for help and focus on Zix's well-being instead of mission objectives represented a fundamental shift in her priorities. When the mission concluded successfully, with all survivors rescued and no serious casualties, Captain Reth made a point of commending the team's performance. This operation succeeded because every team member focused on supporting their colleagues as well as completing objectives, the captain noted. This is how Alliance crews are meant to function. Later, as Sarah was completing her mission reports, she received an unexpected communication from Earth. Admiral Santos, the human liaison to the Alliance, appeared on her screen with what looked like pleased surprise. "Lieutenant Chen, I've been receiving some interesting reports about human integration aboard Alliance vessels," the Admiral said. "It seems that you've become something of a case study in effective interspecies cooperation." "Sir, your experience with the plasma injury and subsequent recovery has been written up by Dr. Vale as a model for understanding human psychological dynamics in mixed crews. According to her report, your initial attempt to hide injury was textbook human behavior, but your adaptation to accepting help has provided valuable insights for future human deployments." Sarah wasn't sure whether to feel proud or embarrassed. "I made a significant error in judgment, Admiral." "You made a human error, Lieutenant, and then you learned from it in a way that benefited everyone around you. That's exactly the kind of adaptability we need in Alliance representatives." Admiral Santos leaned forward slightly. "Chen, I'm authorizing an extension of your deployment if you're willing. The Alliance has specifically requested that you remain aboard the Asterisk Harmony's Edge for an additional year to help develop improved integration protocols for human crew members." After the call ended, Sarah sat in her quarters contemplating the offer. A year ago, she would have accepted immediately, driven by her desire to prove human worthiness. Now, she found herself considering what she actually wanted, not just what would serve humanity's reputation. The decision came easily when the Cubs appeared at her door that evening. "Sarah," Pip said excitedly, "we heard rumors that you might stay longer. Is it true?" "Would you like me to stay?" "Yes," all three said simultaneously. Glub added, "You're part of our pod now. Pods don't separate unless they have to." Crix nodded emphatically. "And you still have more Earth stories to tell us, especially the ones about humans helping each other." As Sarah looked at these young beings who had been instrumental in saving her life by simply caring enough to notice when she was hurt, she realized that her mission had never really been about proving human strength. It had been about demonstrating human capacity for connection, growth, and mutual support. "Then I'll stay," she decided. "After all, someone needs to make sure you three don't get into too much trouble." Their delighted responses filled her quarters with crystal chimes, empathic warmth, and joyful purring. Outside her viewport, the stars continued their ancient dance, and Sarah felt herself part of something larger than any single species or individual ambition. She had learned that hiding her injury hadn't protected her species' reputation, but allowing herself to be cared for had revealed the true strength that made humans valuable to the galactic community. It wasn't their ability to endure alone, but their capacity to build connections that made everyone stronger together. Dr. Vale had been right. The Cubs had seen the truth that sophisticated sensors missed, not just that she was injured, but that healing required community, trust, and the courage to be vulnerable with those who cared about her well-being. As she prepared her message accepting the extended deployment, Sarah smiled at the realization that she was no longer trying to represent humanity to these beings. She had simply become human among friends, and that had made all the difference.